Speak back.
Thank you. Tim, that's a tough act to follow. So thanks for that. A lot of this will be repetitive, unfortunately. So don't hold that against me.
Awesome. So Shafiq, we're going to start with a bit about yourself. I know you joined Redesign Health about 1.5 years ago, but I definitely want to go over your journey just before that as well. And anything you'd like to share relevant with the audience today about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for being here, and thank you, Aman and team, for hosting this amazing event, and also all the other events. So huge round of applause for Aman and team, please. The ecosystem in Canada, in particular, needs organizations like this and events to bring folks like all of you together. Our system is broken, and we need to fix it. And so Redesign Health in general, but on the Canadian side, is trying to make that transition. My early career was in finance. I come from a background in consulting, venture capital, most recently with TELUS Global Ventures, where I invested on behalf of their TELUS Health platform. And what I saw and learned through that process and that career was that there's a lot of fragmentation in the early stage startup space. It is so easy to build today. You can build a product, a solution, but it's so difficult to get into market. And the challenges arise from the clinician side all the way to the hospital side. And so I think today's conversation with your questions will hopefully steward you into the right direction. And I don't have 12 like Tim did, but I have 3 or 4 ideas to share with you today. Redesign Health, for context, we're an early stage venture builder and investor. We've been in market for about 8 years in the US, based out of New York City, with operations globally, including the UK, Saudi Arabia, and of course now Canada. We've built 70 companies over the last 7-8 years, backed by CVS, Samsung Ventures, and General Catalyst. Of our 70 ventures, 11 have exited. So we're doing something right. 5 have failed. So 5 failures out of 70 is not that bad. And the rationale for that is that we're super rigorous and vigorous in how we do our research and create our outbound companies. So we're 0 to 1 builders. We take it from idea to scale, and then we pass it off to growth investors who would take it from there.
That's great. And one question I have for you is, what's really the advantage of a venture studio over a VC company? So where is that advantage that's led to only 5 failures out of 70 companies?
Good question. So a venture builder, sorry, is this off? In the venture building world, we start with a problem. So we take a founder or a hospital or a clinician who says, this is what I've seen firsthand, and I want to rectify or fix this situation. We then identify the challenges. We do a lot of deep research, as I mentioned. Our research team is 8 people. So we have deep research muscle. And then we really want to build within and outside the hospital systems. So right now we work with major hospitals like the largest pediatric hospital in Canada, largest mental health hospital in Canada, and the 3rd largest hospital system in Quebec. And they all have built innovation systems from within, but what they don't have is the rigor to bring in founders like yourselves and ideas to combat the problems that they're seeking inside. I'd say traditional VC, which is what I was doing at TELUS, is more focused on a founder-led problem. So a founder has an idea that he or she wants to pursue, they take it to market, and they hope and they do their best to get into the hospital systems. That can be very challenging. We've seen so many examples in Canada of things that have gone right, but a lot of founders have gone through multiple iterations, and we're here to make that stream a lot easier for them. I'd say we start with ideation based on deep research, the problem validation, but the biggest asset we have is data. Hospitals have so much data they're sitting on. We can talk about this further as we go. But we want to unlock that data, give that power to the founder, and allow them to build their model based on that data. So that's the biggest difference between us and what was I was previously doing as a traditional VC.
That's amazing. So is it safe to say that between all the companies in different countries, so Canada, the US, that data can be used interchangeably and it's actually benefiting different ventures?
Unfortunately not. Data is stuck within the boundaries from which it's born. So data in Canada cannot necessarily be translated to data in the US, no matter how much it's de-identified and whatnot. Canada, we're working on things. All the hospitals have come together with various initiatives over the past 3 to 5 years to centralize the data and make it easier for founders to access. We're not quite there yet. I don't know if the US has something similar, but given the size of their health system, I don't imagine they have that just yet. So that begs the question, how does a founder get access to that data? And we can touch upon this later, but we have 2 different health systems in Canada. We have the individual hospital, or we have the entire hospital system, like a UHN, for example. They're such a large conglomerate that they don't have necessarily the muscle within their organization to help a founder go through that data seeking journey. So we put them in front of the smaller hospitals that are more boutique, that have access to data sets that are also useful, but that can help that founding team scale.
Got it. So are there any companies that you'd say need to be built in Canada? And would you say in general, there's a disadvantage to building in Canada versus elsewhere?
Tim touched upon this briefly. I would love for first of all, how many founders are in the room today? Amazing. That's fantastic. I would love for every founder to build in Canada, stay in Canada, scale in Canada. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. It's very, very difficult to build a unicorn in healthcare in Canada, just given our market size. I think the fact was 10% of Canada's GDP is spent on healthcare. Does anyone have a guess what it might be in the US? 17%. Obviously, it's a larger economic system, so that money is greater. But that just shows you the discrepancy between the two borders. If there's any founders here who are looking to scale to the US, the question I always get asked is, where should I incorporate? And the answer is Delaware. And you incorporate in Delaware, you get access to US investors, and that should help you open some doors. But what I'd really encourage you to do is build in Canada first. Use Canada as a testing ground. We have amazing AI talent. We have, as someone called it today, a really cheap peso. So the dollars go a little further up here. And we have health systems that are willing to work with you all. And that's what's really important and what we're hoping to encourage everyone in this room today. Maybe I can tell you about why we chose Canada too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The provincial fragmentation that we see, we believe it's going to be broken. We think that over the next couple of years, provincial borders will not necessarily be gone, but they'll be alleviated to allow for transportation of procurement, transportation of services, and potentially personnel. And when that happens, it'll be a lot easier for someone to build in BC and export to Nova Scotia. And so that's one of the reasons we're pursuing Canada. The second is we have almost like a 2-tier system. I spoke with a founder yesterday, and he said, he owns a surgery center. He said, a lot of my patients go to the US. They went to the US and they're taking our GDP and spending it in the US. How do we make that come to Canada? We have to build semi-private systems in Canada. Those systems will have to speak to the public system, the EMRs, the EHRs, et cetera. And Redesign wants to be at the forefront of that build, to build the pipes behind the system.
I think you kind of touched on this, but my question is kind of on what are the bottlenecks in Canada? So provincial barriers are one of them. Could you elaborate a bit more on those barriers and any other bottlenecks that you face on a day-to-day basis?
I don't want to say there's a lot of bottlenecks, but maybe I'll go with the top 3. Procurement timelines. It can take someone 18 to 20 months to get a pilot, and it can take them another 18 to 24 months to go from pilot to a paid program. That's not cool. That just eats away at your capital, eats away at your time. And given the speed of AI and the commoditization of building right now, you're left behind if you're in a 24-month cycle. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second is the existing provincial fragmentation. Right now, if you build in BC, you can't necessarily export to Nova Scotia. So that's a bit of an issue. But like I said, we're hoping that alleviates over time. And the third is the risk aversion we have in Canada. We love to talk about our fragmented system, but we also are super risk averse. We don't put capital where our mouth is. The largest capital institutions in Canada are not spending on healthcare, which is a problem for all the founders in the room, but we want to change that. And so Redesign has come to Canada with a capital commitment, but we're working alongside impact funds, government institutions, and other agencies to bring capital to the forefront so that founders like yourselves can scale beyond the provincial borders and beyond the national borders.
I think risk aversion is something that comes up a lot in these events where, it's a common topic and a common pain point that a lot of people are facing. To talk a bit about your first points on just, like the duration it takes to actually get a pilot, how long it takes to go from pilot to a paid project. You've been through this journey quite a few times with different ventures. Could you talk a bit more about what the health systems are actually looking for from different companies? What does that journey look like? What are they looking for? What are the risks that they're trying to navigate?
Yeah, I think what you need to do is find an internal sponsor or champion within. If you're looking to work within a clinical system or a health system, find an internal champion. And that might be an administrator, it might be a clinician, but find that person because they're going to be the ones that get you in the door for procurement or from the operational stakeholders. So for example, the methodology that I have seen in Canada, it goes something like this. You get the clinical sponsor, takes a few meetings, you get their buy-in, they love the idea. Then it goes to the operational stakeholder. It might be the chief medical officer or the chief technology officer. They love or hate it. You have to get past that border. Then it goes to IT security review. You go through all the data compliance. If you get past that checkpoint, you're probably 6 months into your process. Then you go for a budget review. If anyone's ever done a budget review with a hospital, you know that their budgets only get renewed every year. So you have to hit that perfectly. If you miss it by a month, you might be waiting 11 months to get into their budgets. So know when the budget cycles are, know when those review cycles are, and get involved as soon as you can. So let's say you pass that budget cycle. Then you go for procurement approval. You're actually talking to the procurement officer. That person's job is not necessarily to rubber stamp it. They're the bypass. What they want to do is figure out how to go from procurement to integration. So let's say you get past procurement. Now you want to take your idea, your technology, and put it into real life. There are so many different systems in our hospitals that it's so challenging to get into the system. Tim alluded to this as well, and that's where we're trying to break down the barriers. But those are some of the challenges that we're seeing right now and that I've seen in the past. Unfortunately, startups aren't designed to go through a 24 to 36 month process.
Yeah. How can founders keep an eye on different budget cycles, know when they're starting, know when they're ending, kind of get ahead of it before it's almost too late for that?
The first step is to figure out what their budget cycles are. I don't necessarily have advice into how you can determine that, but the first thing would be to figure that out and figure out who those stakeholders are who are signing the checks and ask them when are they reviewing these agreements. Oftentimes hospitals will do like a call for opportunities. So if you can get the RFP cycles, that's usually a good indication of when they might be hitting their budget cycles, is based on their RFPs.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about what's kind of killing the deals. So my question is twofold for you. The first part is, what's the most common reason something fails at the pilot stage and doesn't progress? And the second question would be, what are common missteps that founders make that can be avoided?
Oh, deal killers. Determining and assessing your impact. So when you sell to a hospital, they want to know what the value is of what you're trying to accomplish. Are you saving patient lives? Are you creating shorter wait lists? What is the impact you're going to have? And so that is where I would focus my time and attention when you're speaking with hospital systems. They want to know that your product or service is better than the next person's, and that the time and attention that they spend with you is going to be valuable. So many times we shelve ideas. Ideas end up on the bookshelf. And unless you're the squeaky wheel, you're not necessarily going to see the benefits of your work if you end up on that bookshelf. Tim mentioned that if the bookshelf doesn't get called, you're not going to see time and attention. I would say if your bookshelf doesn't get called, it probably means your technology is out of date. It probably means that they have an innovation team that's replicated a similar idea that's more suitable for their internal processes. And like I said before, with the commoditization of AI, we need to build fast, we need to build well, and we need to ensure that we are compliant with data and other things. I'll do a shout out to Mike. Is Mike still here? Mike's company, they do compliance, that they're compliance consultants. And that's the kind of folks that we need in the system, because they are just as important as builders, because compliance is a huge hindrance as you're trying to build as well.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. What do you think a founder can do when, just starting off? What are some of the things that they should be looking out for? And very early on, you mentioned that there's kind of two people that you'd be selling to. You can sell to individual hospitals. You can be selling to systems like the UHN. So how would an early stage founder navigate that? Would they be, prioritizing one over the other? How would they know which one to go for?
I would start with the smaller hospitals because they're more nimble. Unfortunately, they have smaller budgets. So smaller budgets mean smaller opportunities. But if you're just getting started, that's a good place to start. Ontario, fortunately, has a ton of them, from Humber to various others that I want to single out. Whereas when you're working with a larger system, they're amazing, but their budgets are huge. They often have 2 or 3 hospitals that they're working with, and they don't necessarily have the resources to tell you where to go. They can direct you into the mothership, but from there you often get lost. So if you're starting out, my humble suggestion, is to start with a smaller hospital or clinic, identify that your product or solution has legs and can be scaled, and then look at the other hospital systems that could help you wrap around that and grow your customer base, your data sets, etc.
What are some common pain points that you see these smaller hospitals have right now that you'd like to actually see addressed, if anything stands out?
Oh, geez. Smaller hospitals, the resource constraints are probably the biggest thing I'd say, but beyond that, it's just very difficult to navigate the procurement teams. As I mentioned, the timelines are very lengthy, but beyond that, I think it's just you have to be in the market. You have to be known. We were talking about building in stealth. I would encourage folks in the healthcare system not to build in stealth. Be vocal about your idea. Tell everybody about it. People can copy it tomorrow if they really wanted to, but if you're first to market, if you've adopted the strategy for gathering patient data, that'll be your winning strategy, I think, from a small hospital system perspective.
Got it. And the same question for, if you're already talking to these hospitals, you've got 1 or 2 pilots. Is there any advice you'd give going from a pilot to a full commitment?
Manage your cash flow, because it's going to take longer than you think. When I was at TELUS Global Ventures, we invested in 3 companies I can think of off the top of my head, and we didn't follow on because it took them 18 months just to get in the door. And as VCs, we want to look for that ROI. So keep that in mind. Look at your end goal. Who do you want to attract for your Series A, Series B, Series C? The seed just gets you in the door, but really those latter conversations with investors will get you to that next level. So that would be my suggestion there.
And since you're, talking to a lot of health administrators, a lot of different vendors, I guess you would be a good person to ask what they're looking for. From their shoes, what are some of the risks that they're managing? What differentiates one proposal to another for them?
Compliance is huge. If you can get through the compliance stage, that's a major hurdle. Integration is also massive because they're such complicated systems, and we're building AI-enabled technology mostly. Getting integrated and entrenched with their systems is often a very challenging process. It's very time-consuming, and so they'll analyze your tech, they'll rip it apart, and it can be a humbling experience.
That's great. How do founders what's kind of next for Redesign Health in terms of ventures, in terms of goals over the next couple months? And do you have any, asks from the audience today?
My first ask is keep building. As I said at the top, we really need builders in Canada. We need more founders. We need more entrepreneurs focused on healthcare. We know how broken our system is. We don't need to belabor all the things that we've talked about on a day-to-day basis. But I'd encourage everyone who's considering the build on side of desks, play with Claude Code and all these amazing tools that are available. And when you're building a team, I use the term PI, the 3.14 mathematical calculation. Have a founding team that's deep in 2 verticals, but has horizontal commonalities, because that's what will build a formidable team. Teams are what make everybody win. It's difficult to build in healthcare, but your team, if they're solid, you have the data, you have the technology, that's your winning formula. So don't be discouraged by by no's from healthcare systems, from hospitals, from clinicians, because there will always be a buyer for an amazing team and an amazing technology.
Can we give a big round of applause? We're gonna go into Q&A. So does anyone have any questions?
Okay. Hi guys. Shafiq, thanks for the talk. So you talked a lot about things that startups need to be mindful of when going to health systems or even starting a business. And from your experience, flipping the thought process around a bit, is there anything that are pet peeves to you guys that you don't want to see startups coming to you guys with or talking to or whatnot?
I think we could spend another hour on that. Pet peeves with startups are, okay, I'll give you my top of my head, a page full of 12 advisory board members. You don't need 12 advisory board members. You probably need one or two that are really focused on what you're trying to build, but you don't need to focus on your advisory board members. A lot of people feel as though the more faces on a page, the better. If your team is 3 and you have two other members that are advisory members, that's great. 5-person team works. No need to beleaguer that. The second is looking for venture capital. Not everybody needs venture capital. I tell a lot of startup founders, don't come talk to me until you're almost desperate for it. Get the grants. Go for all the free money out there. That's where you'll get non-dilutive funding. We take too much equity. We take ownership. You want to come to us last. So coming to us, one of the pet peeves would be coming to us before you've even exhausted those resources. That'd be number 2. And number 3 would be know your market. A lot of folks come to us to build a product or solution that they think is really cool for them, their parents, their grandmother, their brother or sister, but it's not really scalable. So know your market, know how big your market is. You don't need to tell me it's a $5 billion TAM. That's not important to me. But if you can tell me what your strategy is and where you're going to go, that's where I will open up my ears for you.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
We'll just take her first and then we'll do.
Thanks. There was some great insights there for us. Could you expand a little bit on the mechanics of the deals that you guys do? Is it a check you put in? What's the average? What does that team look like when you land that check? And what does it look like for the term of your engagement with the company?
Sure. I won't get into too many details because we could talk about this for a while as well. But at the crux of it, we work with founders at the earliest stages and we put a $2 million check in. We want to be the first and only check because we want to surround you with the resources that we have. Redesign Health, as I mentioned, we have a lot of capital, but we have a lot of advisors on our team as well. And I just told you how advisors are overkill. We have 800 of them. But each of them has their own focus on a particular vertical that they're strong at. Whether the payers, providers, clinicians, etc. So we rely on them to be our eyes and ears as we do research. So we take our research team, our founding team, our advisory team, we put everyone together for 7 to 8 weeks, and we do a quick sprint. And we tell them, go out to the hospital or the hospital systems or the clinics that you want to sell to and get 5 LOIs, letters of intent. If they want to buy it in the future, what you're about to build, it's a good signal that others will too. And so that's how we get conviction around building a team. We take about 20 to 25% equity, depending upon the situation.
So you've mentioned a few times that you just want to go to a hospital or hospital system. I'm working with a company right now, a U.S. company, and they came to Canada the wrong way, and so they need help with their device to get into Canadian hospitals. So they called me. What is your advice to getting in front of hospitals? I mean, not all of us have the network and connections that you do, so it's not as easy as just going to Collingwood or Humber and saying, walking in the door and saying, we want to talk to somebody that makes decisions.
So find the champion. If you're building a Alzheimer's product, go into that particular studio and talk to that champion, talk to that physician, talk to the clinician who's dealing with patients on a day-to-day basis. Sit down with them, show them your idea, have them test it with some of their patients if they're able to. And that's a good way of building the momentum, building the buy-in. And that person will then be your cheerleader. They'll be your advocates for when you go through that procurement cycle or the pilot cycle eventually.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Aman.